This quick video is about putting together a dehumidifier reel holder for your printer. The orange parts I designed and printed, and you can download these. Then there are some 8mm Teflon washers, some 608 skate bearings, 6mm fitting Bowden tube. The aluminium tube I think came from a Dyson vacuum cleaner. I found it in a bin. There's 8mm steel rod, and then there's this airtight storage container which is big enough for 3 rolls of standard filament side by side, or if you're using the big 2kg reels for the recycled stuff, it'll fit those too. Then the silica gel fits underneath in the big flat orange box there, and that sits on top of the rails that hold the 2 triangles at the sides together. I found the bottom rods needed to be 210mm long, and I've just cut those with the angle grinder. I did try them with the circular saw blade that's made for steel, but these are hardened rods and that will not cut. So just deburring the top of those rods a little bit. Then when they're smooth enough, I'm just going to grab those triangles and put the 2 rods in there. It's a good tight fitting. So they do really need to be deburred before they go in those holes. Then the 2 side pieces go together. One more triangle on top. That just slides in. Give it a tap. It's full. And this is the triangle that sits in the bottom of the storage container. And there's the silica tray that sits on the bottom of the triangle. And it fits. Cutting the aluminium. So much easier than a hacksaw. Use a proper aluminium blade for this. Just getting everything assembled. File off the little tab that often happens when you cut through something with a saw like that. And then I'm going to fit the end cap bearings. They have the skate bearing in the middle there. The steel rod goes through the bearings and the end cap with the groove goes on the end of the steel rod. So if I can get both of those bearings in their end caps on the aluminium tube. Finally, get it straight and it goes in okay. Alright, and then just put the steel rod through both those bearings. You can see the Teflon washer is on the outside of the bearings just to make sure there's no friction there at all. One more Teflon washer. And then the end cap. And that just goes on there. You can't see any of the steel rod at all. It fits nicely. It goes into the forks on the end of the triangles and it spins really well. So that should be a very nice friction-free fit for the filament tube. And does it spin? Yeah, it spins. Now putting it all together and seeing how everything fits, this part should never need to be removed, but the tray comes out and then the reel sits in there. I'm going to plan on serving the filament from the center position, so I'm just going to put the lid on and then have a look from the top and mark roughly the center of the diameter of the filament so that a full filament and a nearly empty filament will both feed okay through that tube fitting. Just a little dot, and then I'm going to cut that out with a nice sharp 6mm drill bit. I've made that hole now. Now on the 6mm Bowden tube fitting, I'm just going to add an 8mm Teflon washer which nicely fits over the base of it and should make it just that tiny bit more airtight. That goes through. 1 6mm hex nut and finger tight should be plenty. I'll tighten that up with a spanner if it ever comes off, but I don't think it ever will. grab some filament, bring it through. And that will then feed very nicely. Nice and now for some silica gel. I bought a bulk container of this stuff. It's loose, it's orange when it's useful, and it's dark green when it's becoming saturated. It can be recharged by putting it in the oven. I'm just filling this tray with a bunch of fresh silica gel, and this tray then just goes back in there under the reels. The grooves keep it roughly in place on the rods, and if I never tip it up, it doesn't really need to have a top. The little sensor there just fits between the tray and the wall, so I can always see it from outside the container, and I'm going to call that done. Just one more thing, I've got a piece of Teflon tube with some filament jammed in it, and that is just going to block that hole and keep the silica gel from absorbing moisture when it's not in use. And finally, there's the entire thing. It'll fit 3 reels or one 2 kilo reel. You can see the humidity and temperature. Finished. Just a couple of hours later, it's a little bit warmer, but you can see the humidity has dropped by quite a lot, and I think this is really going to help with the printing problems that humidity causes. Hope you enjoyed the video.